Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Bass & Associates, First Data Resources, and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This with Carol Schrader, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Welcome once again to Consider This, our first show in year 2000. Now, there are 3 zeros in this year, but whenever the year ends in a zero, that means it's time for the U.S. Census. My guest today is Gardene Wilson II, and he's going around town and around the area trying to sort of prep us mentally, answer some questions. And you think, oh, census, okay, but some people have tons of questions and even fears. I mean, this isn't, to me, it's just filling out a form.
This is true. This is true. With the census, what the census does is it counts people. We count people, tall, short. We count the little ones. We count the big ones. Basically, what the census is April 1st. It's a picture of what the United States looks like.
A snapshot. From age, demographics, everything about that we can divide people into slots so we know who we are in many ways.
That is correct.
Incomes, everything.
That is correct. That is correct. With the census, what the census does, again, the census counts picture. It's America's picture, and it'll actually be America's picture for the next 10 years. Omaha has had a dramatic change since 1990 as far as populations are concerned. And that's why we do it every 10 years in order to capture the data for the changes that have actually taken place in various communities.
This is an incredibly enormous project. Now, other countries take censuses of sorts. Is this the most exhaustive?
This is the largest peacetime effort that ever takes place in the country. In fact, because of the dramatic change within the United States, this is the largest peacetime effort ever that will take place, and that's Census 2000. All
right, now there are so many aspects to this that we could talk about, but basically, this is a key.
This is the key.
This, folks, it's not an IRS short form, it's a Census Bureau short form, and this is something that everybody is approached with, sent, it's taken to them, or whatever. Everybody is supposed to fill this out.
Right. Approximately 5 out of every 6 people will receive the short form. So the majority of the United States will actually receive the short form. It has approximately 8 questions, and it should take about 15 minutes to complete on the average. We encourage everybody to fill out the form and send it back in.
What happens to the 6th out of the 6 people?
1 out of every 6 people will actually receive the long form. And the long
that's scary. Anytime you say long form in the United States, they think tax long form. No.
The long form actually, it's about 50 questions, and it's a little bit more detailed, and it takes about an hour to complete. You're not alone. We'll have a number of questionnaire assistance centers, places that you can actually go to get difficult questions asked about the census form so that you can have that assistance in completing it and turning it back in.
Now, I assume since it's 1 out of 6, it would be just prohibitive to have everybody fill that out, and it's sort of a sampling.
That is correct.
In and among all the masses, that 1 out of 6 represents just that sort of 1 out of 6 of an average neighborhood, precinct, however you divide it up.
Right, because the 1 out of 6, I mean, it's a random sampling that takes place, so it's no one person that's actually picked, I'm sure that'll probably be different when you get the form. You might think, well, why did I get this long form?
Yes, somebody doesn't like me.
Right. But keep in mind that the census actually tracks houses. The census is not, the census form is actually based on housing. How many people reside at this particular residence. There are no social security numbers or anything like that related to either the long or the short form. And the census form is actually kept in its strictest confidentiality. You're protected by Title 13. And any breach of the confidence is a $5,000 fine or 5 years in jail to any census employee.
Well, we have don't leave us on this show, because there are lots of areas we have to cover in a short period of time that, and I'm sure at least one of them will interest you. But it is the law to not only keep all this information private, but to fill out the census.
That is correct. This is required by law. Unfortunately, though, we have people who don't participate in the census, and as a partnership specialist, that's one of the things that I do in order to try and curve that, to increase the mail response rate, so that when people get it back, they say, well, okay, I heard about this, this is something that's safe, let me fill it out and send it back in. And we're trying to decrease the undercount. Historically, the undercount, people who have higher undercounts are made up of renters, female head of households, people of color, renters, and children. Although children made up 26% of the population in 1990, they represented over 52% of the undercount. Over 4 million children were missed in the 1990 census.
I don't think anyone who doesn't work with these numbers and how they play out over the next 10 years until the next census realize how many ways they are used. They're not generally used against those populations, i.e. people of color, the poor people, whatever. They're actually used in many instances to enhance services or enhance funding. And so it is extremely critical that these people be counted, because these oftentimes are the most vulnerable in the population.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. In fact, the census actually goes back in the community, and oftentimes we just don't know. Two things to keep in mind when you get the census form in the mail is that the census represents economics into your own communities. In addition to the representation, legislative districts are redrawn based on census data. So if there's a huge increase in a particular area, you may get another representative to represent
so
your
district. Your voice,
district.
in essence, will be louder.
Exactly. So,
and with the congressional redistricting coming up, and also, you know, just the state and Douglas County. I mean, every, you know, by district election is affected potentially.
Right. You're absolutely right, Carol. And when we speak about the economics, there's approximately $200 billion that's distributed annually based on census data. This money comes from the federal governments back through the states into cities, into communities. And you know, each person over a 10-year period represents approximately $3,000 to their own community. These services you will actually see in transportation, job services, housing, education, hospitals, recreational centers, and business development.
And they really are services. They are things that actually help make a community better.
That is correct.
In terms of quality of life and business. I mean, if transportation, so let's say our public bus system gets federal money, I mean, that makes it better not only for the people that have to ride the bus, but for the businesses that are crying out. So whether you look at it from a human point of view or just a, you know, good old-fashioned capitalistic point of view, I mean, this money works to the advantage of a community. Right,
that is absolutely correct. You know, and like I said, unfortunately, the trickle down as far as the information is concerned, we just don't know how important it is. This really is our future, you know, when you look at it. And if you don't fill out the form, what it does is it causes a drain on particular communities. Within the state, just as an example, when you look at the Hispanic population,
the fastest growing in the state by far. The fastest growing,
exactly. In 1990, there were approximately 36,000 Hispanics within the state of Nebraska. It is estimated now that there are approximately 95,000 Hispanics within the state, which means that they've almost tripled. In certain communities like Grand Island, they've quadrupled. I mean, you know, you see that huge influx. I mean, South Omaha is practically tripled, you know, in the Hispanic population, in that increase.
Maybe even more.
And this only takes place every 10 years. So, you know, if you don't participate, it's going to affect that specific community for the next 10 years.
Well, and then there's a matter of I mean, I know this from a federal point of view, this isn't, but you know, nobody would probably come right out and say this, but in terms of a body politic in a community, it has a lot to do with clout. Now, our Hispanic population is growing, and they need services down there, and,
Right.
they you know, leaders will rise to the top, but in order, it certainly helps be able to hold out some numbers. I mean,
Right.
it's credible backup, not just your opinion about, you know, how you need to be represented.
Right, exactly. And the counts, again, represent the picture. Keep in mind, it's a picture of what America looks like. I mean, documented, undocumented, and again, the confidentiality is held within the strictest confidence.
And they haven't historically, and I mean in the last 50 years or so, since I wasn't around 200 years ago, although some might think so,
No.
there hasn't been a major problem. You know, I haven't heard of, you know, you hear IRS breaches and privacy. I haven't heard of, you know, over the years, many privacy breaches at all. So, I mean, it's not really a major issue.
Right. I mean, there have been instances where the IRS has attempted to get census documents, the INS, even the president has tried to get census documents, but Title 13 protects the
Probably the
citizens that
FBI
participate.
and
Right, you know, the protected. So the breach of confidence and the privacy has never happened within the United States, within the history of census, and we've been doing this since 1790, so it's been a long time.
Certainly has. Before we get down to some of the specifics of gearing up for the census, which I know you want to talk about, I do want to talk about cultural concerns or fears about the census. And I mean, you have people that don't want to or won't or are afraid to, everything from probably you know, you hear the stories of the survivalist types that don't want their name or number on anything. They don't even want to be known to exist, the extremes.
Right.
Then you have people, and I think the Hispanic community may be one, we'll have to find out, where there is a cultural fear of being recorded. How do you approach this really diverse questions and fears about, you know, having your name on a piece of paper?
One of the things, this has really been a blessing to be involved with the census, because for me personally, what it has done is it's actually opened my eyes to so many different cultures. I mean, within the state of Nebraska, there is so much diversity. And
we don't think of Nebraska as that diverse.
Nebraska is extremely diverse, and really, it is your voice. It is your community's voice. It's your children's voice for services and a representation for the future. You know, when you look at just the numbers, you're utilizing the services within the community. When you don't participate, you cause an additional drain on community services. And really, that's what it's about.
And affect your children.
Exactly.
So you mentioned to me when we were talking prior to the show that, and I don't think you were like pointing fingers, but just as was an anecdotal thing that you mentioned, was that within the Hispanic community, which is largely Catholic, just from their culture, that they may go to, let's say, the Catholic parishes and attend church, but don't even sign up in those parishes. I mean, there's just, now, does this go back to the illegal immigrant kinds of paranoias, or is this just their own culture? Or, I know you're not a Hispanic expert, but what I mean is, just as an example of a cultural difference, it's not just the census they're afraid of.
No, it is actually government. You know, when you actually look at a lot of the run-ins that different cultures have had with government, yes, there is reason for a lot of apprehension and reasons for a lot of fear. But again, you know, the census is strictly confidential, and it is protected, and it has been. I mean, we have documents that actually show that your answers are private. And
so how are you going to go into South Omaha, Grand Island, Norfolk, Nebraska, North Platte, and I'm not picking on the Hispanics, because it's fastest growing, it's critical.
Right.
How are you going to go in there and I guess, win them over.
As a partnership specialist, what we do is we work with community agencies. We work with leaders that are actually in the community, such as Our Lady of Guadalupe with Father Damien.
Absolutely.
With the Chicano Awareness Center with Gina. They've done tremendous work in helping to promote the census and let their constituents know exactly what it is about. Because a lot of times you don't participate because you don't know.
So you're going to sort of the trusted entities within those communities.
Exactly. In addition to partnering with events that they have, we were a part of the Cinco de Mayo celebration. You know, and just like
so you started last
oh
May.
yeah, you know, we have been at this to get the people to understand. You know, we're just now getting into, you know, like the last 100 meters of this 400-yard dash, partnering with the community agents, just like in the African American community with the Juneteenth celebration, with the Mad Dads Parade. You know, we were involved. It takes that effort, and it takes getting out and touching people so that people understand what it's really about. Because, like I said, oftentimes information doesn't trickle all the way down to the people that could really benefit.
You know, one of the things that's kind of an aside because it might be critical. Is the Census in the Schools project.
Right.
I suppose, you know, I'm thinking if my son were to be exposed to some, and they have projects all the way from K through 12,
Right.
For teachers to use and access, and it's pretty. You can even go to the internet. I mean, it's a piece of cake to at least get basic information on it,
Right.
or you can call Gardine.
Yeah.
But at first I said, well, you know, my son would probably say, oh, that's cool, census, oh yeah, and learn about it. But in some of these cultural things that we were just talking about,
Right.
the child may lead the adult.
Right, you're absolutely correct.
So
With the Census in the Schools program, and especially talking about the little ones, the Census in the Schools program, we partnered with Scholastic. And principals are actually going to be getting the principal kits to encourage teachers to get the Census in the Schools kits. Now again, we have them K through kindergarten through 4, we have them for middle school, and then we have them for high school. And these kits are actually designed to teach these children about why the census is important, and to actually get their parents to understand the importance of it and participate when they get their form.
And it really works in, from what I could tell just looking at some of the, I didn't see the actual classroom material, but maps.
Oh yes.
I mean, all the kinds of things that are skills taught.
Right.
Enumeration is something they're learning to do, whether they're counting you know, sticks on a page to learn tens, hundreds, and thousands,
Right.
but we enumerate people too.
This is true.
So I mean, from the littlest one on up, there's a lot that can be applied to learning. So it's not just a fluff kind of deal.
Right, right. You know.
But if the kid feels trust in it, you know, it's like kids that say, "Mom, stop smoking."
Right.
You know, "Mom, oh, this is a good thing, Mom. This is a good thing.
Right.
We're going to learn all about who we are."
Right. This is true. In addition to the census in the schools, with that effort, we also have posters, and you'll see. I mean, you know, as we move forward in the schools, posters of different ethnic groups that are actually in different communities to actually promote the census. Many efforts. We also have a national advertising campaign that has actually been launched to actually really get into getting people to understand. And this is the first time that has ever happened.
Now, I haven't seen much in the general advertising, but it's targeted probably in certain areas.
That is correct. That is correct.
How much does the census cost?
The census is actually about $4.5 billion.
With a B.
Right.
But I mean, this is as you said, is the largest peacetime effort that we undertake.
Right. The largest peacetime effort, and like I said, with the diversity that is actually taking place within the United States, this will be the largest peacetime effort ever, Census 2000.
And some of the material that I got from the internet, and you can go look up Census 2000 or a Bureau of Census and find all kinds of information if you're
Right.
just curious about not only this census coming up, but how we've used numbers from the past. I mean, tons of information.
Right, and that website is www.census.gov.
Oh, I just did a search, Census 2000, man.
Oh.
It just blew me away with all the entries. So you don't even have to remember the .com.
Right, right.
If you don't want to. But they said that one of the questions, and there was a question and answer sheet, what is the Census Bureau doing to provide non-English language assistance? And it was amazing. They have language assistance guides from everything from Albanian to Hmong, and we
Right.
have the Hmong population here in Omaha, Japanese, Yiddish, Tongan, Thai, Swahili, Czech. We certainly have a few Czechs around here.
Right.
But I mean, they are really prepared for a lot of contingencies in terms of making sure that everyone's counted.
Yeah, there are approximately 47 different language guides. And you can actually receive the census form in 6 different languages, you know. In Spanish, I know, and Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese. So you'll get a pre-census questionnaire. If you want it in a different language, you can just send that back and get it in the language.
You know, some of the people of color in the last 2 or 3 censuses were very concerned about the fact that when you check out on a census thing by you know, what is a person's race?
Right.
And we have so many people because this is a melting pot. I mean, 100 years ago it was like, oh, I'm half Czech and German, a little English mixed in. Now we have actual ethnicities and races mixed, and people felt very. One of the things that sort of they were affronted by in the sentence is that you would have to mark one of who you are. So if you were half African American and half Caucasian, you would either have to mark white or black or African American. And people felt that this is, if you're taking a snapshot, you're denying who I am. This is the first year you can mark up to 3. Isn't that right, in the racial, ethnic categories?
That is correct. You know, and again, with the census form, there's self-identification. I mean, you know, again, just like you said, it would depend on how you actually see yourself. And again, everything with the census data actually comes back into the community.
Actually, it says, what is a person's race? Mark 1 or more races. So you can mark white, black, which is also named African American or Negro, American Indian or Alaska Native as one. Then you've got Asian Indian, Chinese, Filipino, other Asian race. I mean, it delineates a lot more than it did.
Right, and there's also a space which you can mark other. You know, if one of your ethnicities was not listed, there's a space,
Right.
you know, for other
Now,
as well.
I know you can't answer this question, but I'm wondering how they're how they're going to measure all these people that are 1/3 something. You know, because it's a game of numbers. And you know, where you're going to end up with 1/3 of a person.
Well, no,
You know,
no.
some of these in terms of under the ethnic and race categories when they
The person on the form will actually be counted. One of the things.
it'll be counted as one human being.
Right, that is correct.
But then in terms of identifying populations, then I suppose they'll work out the numbers.
Right, that is correct. And one of the things too is that a lot of people don't know how much census data is actually used. When you actually talk about it, on the website, the mailback response rates will actually be tallied right after the forms go out, which is later part of March. But the census data is actually used in a number of areas for business development. I know that when we were developing our business plan, we looked at a lot of census data.
Your family owns a business.
Right, right. We looked at a lot of census data just to put the information together to determine what does this community actually look like? What
Location
Right.
would be prime?
Right.
I was surfing the web one time and I was looking up, as I was trying to get a better feel for the Hispanic population, and
Okay.
I went to it. You know, you're looking, and it was a Hispanic marketing, a national Hispanic marketing website, and they quoted census figures quite a bit. They then extrapolated to the different, you know, to what probably is now, because the figures at that time were 10 years old.
Right.
But I mean, this was geared up to very small Hispanic businesses. But again, the census figures.
Right.
So they're not just used for federal aid
Right.
or election districting, but I mean, every aspect of business and commerce can use these, and the permutations and combinations of these figures. I mean, they divide them and cut them in so many different ways that you really can't imagine the snapshot that you can get of a community if
Right.
you're using those figures.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And that's what America's picture looks like. I know that when you look at your family picture, it looks different when you don't have, you know, Uncle Sam or
Aunt Mary.
Aunt Bessie in there. You know, it's an incomplete picture. That's why we encourage everybody to fill out the form and send them back in. It's the voice. It's the voice of the community.
What about, there was a little survey on there that said, would you fill out your census form by internet if you could? And I think it was just taking a survey, because
Right.
the internet is not available yet for the census, is it?
No.
Maybe 10 years from
Yeah,
now.
I know that in the earlier phases they were looking to actually have it develop, and I would imagine that as much as technology is actually pushing itself, I would say that would be something to look for in 2010.
But there must be a lot of computers involved in this. I mean, from the
Yes.
time the first people went out in, 1780?
1790, right?
1790. I mean, I imagine that there's a lot of automation.
Right.
involved.
And the other thing about it too is that understand that your individual answers on the census actually go into what they call a census tract. So there's no way that they can track you individually.
Yeah, once we know that we have Jeanette Doe at this address,
Mhm.
you know, just for purposes of knowing that we have everyone,
Right.
then the name sort of disappears.
Right, and it's combined into as far as the public access to the information, it's actually combined in a broader scope. And the census tract in a metropolitan area is made of approximately 6,000 people. You know, so
tract.
yeah, just to show you how concise the public actually has access to that information.
Well, we have just a little time left, and
Okay.
before we have a census, we have to have people.
We have to have people.
There are a large number of jobs because this is a
Right.
very personnel intensive thing. Tell us what you folks need.
Okay, one of the main initiatives with the census for Census 2000 is to actually get people from the community to actually take the census in the community. People from specific communities are more familiar with people that are actually in the community than someone coming in from the outside.
So do you want this, even though it's paid and the jobs pay pretty well, you want this to be a grassroots effort because that's what's going to make it work best?
That is correct. That is correct. In fact, for any information related to jobs, because we have office positions as well as enumeration positions, crew leader positions, the task again is going to be enormous, and we're in the process of actually hiring now. The number to the census jobs, any information relative to census jobs, is 1-888-325-7733.
Can they call information and ask for a census jobs number? Have you made it easy since people aren't going to walk around memorizing that number?
Right. Yeah, they should be able to call the information for that. But the number, that 1-888, I know it gets you directly in.
Okay, well, run me down or call us here at KYNE. I'll make sure KYNE TV, and they'll have the number.
Right.
Hey, Gardine, we've run out of time.
Okay.
But you can get other information at that number will be passed on to the right people,
That is
correct?
correct. And if a specific community would like individual presentation, I can be reached at 1-800-493-1644.
Call us here at UNO. We'll get you those numbers. Thanks a lot, Gardine.
right,
Good
thank
luck
you.
on the census. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Bass & Associates and First Data Resources.